Hello friends, I am Prashant. You're watching educational stuff. Today we'll be having the discussion on the editorial page of the Hindu newspaper. There are 4 articles. The first article regarding the India and China line of actual control, which should be at peace. The second one, which highlights the inequalities by the government and for greater privatization. Third article focuses on the double disaster which the havoc created by the Amphan cyclone. Fourth article, which also describes prohibiting 4G Act into Jammu and Kashmir and a violation of rights found. Before we begin, let's have some discussion on the vocabulary. Hiatus. Hiatus means pause or a break in continuity or a sequence of activity. Hiatus means a pause or a break. In a sentence usage, German football's Premier Division marked the revival of top-flight international sporting action after a 2-month-long hiatus. Plethora means a large or excessive amount of something. A plethora of committees or plethora of subcommittees, or a plethora of opportunities. Abide. Abide means to accept. Escalate. Escalate means increase. Dispute means conflict. Stalemate. Stalemate means a situation where there is no further move. In a sentence usage, flag meetings between brigade commanders have so far been unable to break the stalemate. Impetus. Impetus means the force or energy with which the body moves, or in other meaning, something that makes a process or activity happen or happen more quickly. In a sentence usage, the ending of the Cold War gave a new impetus to idealism. Embrace. Embrace means to hold closely, to accept in a willing manner. In a sentence usage, instead of embracing the welfare state path, the government is encouraging greater privatization. Fragile. Fragile means easily broken or damaged. Bereft. Bereft means unhappy in love or suffering from unrequited love or sorrow. In a sentence usage, I was bereft and I have been able to replace her. Onus. Onus means something that is one's duty or responsibility. Putting the onus on a citizen. The next word is pronounced as jeopardy, not jeopardy, jeopardy. Jeopardy means danger of loss, harm or failure. In a sentence usage, the whole peace process is in a jeopardy. Wither. Wither means to become dry. In a sentence usage, it is not true that the old myths either die or wither away. Unheralded means without warning or announcement. A totally unheralded telegram that his daughter died last night. Stentorian. Stentorian means loud or resonant or powerful voice. His stentorian voice occasionally rose to such a pitch as to astound the India encamped in the vicinity. This is a picture. One side it is a line of control, other side that is precaution. As a line of control is increased, means line of control is Chinese government that the coronavirus is increasing, we need to take the precautions. That is social distancing, as you can see from the figure. The first article, which is keeping the peace, it is regarding India and China must end tensions on the border by clarifying the LAC. LAC is a line of actual control. It is a democratic line, that means a geographical line that separates Indian controlled territory from Chinese controlled territory in the former princely state and of Jammu and Kashmir. There are 2 common ways in which the term line of actual control is used. In the narrow sense, it refers only to the line of control in the western sector of the borderland between two countries. In that sense, LAC forms the effective border between two countries together with McMahon Line in the east and a small undisputed section in between the wider sense. It can be used to refer to both Western Line of Control and the McMahon Line, in which sense it is the effective border between India and People's Republic of China. With the four incidents along the line of control in the recent weeks, India-China border is witnessing the highest tensions since the Doklam standoff in 2017. In the 3 years since, both sides have done remarkably well to keep the peace. Prime Minister Modi and President Xi both agreed differences should not be allowed to escalate to disputes. Also, a clear message was sent to military to abide by the detailed protocols already in place. India has been upgrading its roads as it plays catch up with China's already enjoying an advantage in both terrain and infrastructure. China now seems to be telling that India has no right to carry out the kind of activity that Beijing has already done. India is well within its right to carry out construction works. The immediate priority is for both sides to use existing channels and step back. Flag meetings between brigade commanders have so far been unable to break the stalemate. China has resisted this as a distraction to the boundary negotiations, but rather than agree on the line, both can instead simply seek to better understand the claims of other and reach common understanding to regulate activity in these areas. Clarifying the LAC may be even provide a fresh impetus to the stalled boundary talks between special representatives. Beyond the posturing, both sides known a final settlement will be ultimately have to use the LAC as a basis with only minor adjustments. Only a settlement will end the shadowboxing of LAC. With both countries in the midst of an unprecedented global pandemic, the time to push for settlement to a distracting, protracted dispute is now a deep concern. This is regarding the LAC, India and China, which they should take in peace. The second article, which tells the lockdown was highlighted stark inequalities. The novel coronavirus is a global threat, but the pandemic has had an even impact across the country within countries. Historically, social inequality has always been extreme in India. However, the lockdown has sharpened the edges of inequality even further, especially because of the way it has been implemented. Many countries have imposed lockdown, but not as stringent as Indian one. A disastrous decision. Nobody is safe from the virus, but some classes are more protected than others. Class and wealth inequality means COVID-19 may pose greater risks to some as it poses a double threat to the. In India, the lockdown favors the balcony class with no regards of its consequences for others. The pandemic has exposed the precarious existence of millions of migrants who operate the levels of informal economy. It required no rocket science to anticipate that India's huge army of the informal labor would be most badly hit by the lockdown. Repeated extension of lockdown has caused economic devastation to workers with informal economy, as it has left them with no income, no food, no shelter. The center is monitoring Indian economy estimate that about 140 million people have lost jobs since the lockdown. In a brief, pervasive unemployment a feature of Indian economy before the lockdown, worsened after all. Worldwide, the defining images of India's lockdown are caravans of migrant workers walking hundreds of kilometers to reach their homes. Bereft of substantive support from the government or the employees, they want to escape the city and get back to their village and families. Several hundreds of them lost their lives in their desperate attempt to reach home during the lockdown. The Safe Life Foundation, a non-profit organization working to prevent road accidents, had recorded nearly 2,000 road crashes and 368 deaths from March 25th when the lockdown began to May 16th. The Indian Home Ministry had asked shops, industries and commercial establishments to pay wages to the workers during the lockdown, but it offered no financial support to this. Social activist Harsh Mandir asked the Supreme Court to order the government to pay wages. As expected, the apex court refused to intervene. However, the court intervened and asked the government not to resort to any coercive action against private companies that had not paid their workers full wages during this lockdown in accordance with the government or in March. Since then, the government has dropped the crucial order. Clearly, the court had readily accepted the government's assurance that it was looking after migrant laborers, but all that the government had done was to take small steps such as providing dry rations and paltry sum of 500 rupees, the first of the three installments of the sum of 1500 relief to Jandan accounts of women, putting the onus on the citizens. The Sangh Parivar believes that society has to take care of itself through self-regulation. Given this worldview, it is no surprise that the BJP government is offering little by the way of safety net. Rather, Prime Minister Modi, in one of his national addresses, asked each citizen to help 9 poor families during the lockdown. This puts the responsibility of containing the consequences of pandemic squarely on the citizens instead of instituting a government-backed social support system. While the call to compassion is unremarkable, it has two implications. It minimizes the urgency of the state intervention required to deal with the economic crisis, and it passes on the responsibility to citizens with the emphasis on citizens' duties as against citizens' rights. Greater privatization. Seen against the scale of distress, the government's economic stimulus package is niggardly based on the minimal fiscal cost and minimum social spending. At this rate, even a good monsoon can be considered a fiscal stimulus. The immediate relief to the people is not more than 1% of GDP. The stimulus package has been rightly dismissed to almost everyone outside the government as too little too late. The much derided MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act and National Food Security Act have come to the rescue of the people. Ironically, both the schemes are legacies of the Congress-led United Progressive Alliance government, and both were hugely criticized by BJP. Now the government decided to allow an additional 40,000 crore to MGNREGA. This is a welcome as it will provide a semblance of relief during the distress in rural India. But in the cities, migrant workers do not have enough, even this modicum of social security. The one important lesson that this pandemic has underlined is urgent need for an urban employment guarantee scheme. In the meantime, generous cash transfer can provide economic security. However, for this to happen, there should be a human government responsive on the basic need of its people. Let's move to another article, which is a double disaster. The trail of death and devastation that Cyclone Amphan has left in West Bengal and Odisha demonstrates once again the fragile state of eastern coastal states during the storm season. At least 72 people are dead in Bengal, and normal life is paralyzed for millions in Kolkata and the rural areas of both states. The states also along the east coast have evolved a code of practice for a storm coming under the category 3 and above. Evacuations, arranging for backing power, warning people to stay far from the coast, designating strong buildings as cyclone shelters, and providing for at least a week's supply of cooked food besides blustering medical supplies. Yet the loss of life and damage to livelihoods is always significant. This time has been no different, and the center and the government of affected states, including those in the northeast lashed by heavy rain, must help people already weighed down by severe lockdown peaks. There is an additional challenge as thousands of people have been moved to crowded shelters where the COVID-19 pandemic poses a continuing threat. Adhering to hygienic practices, monitoring those required medical assistance, and testing for the virus is a high priority. India's cyclone warning system had made major advances for being able to provide clear warnings and saving lives, but the precarious lives led by millions of citizens have once again been subjected to severe shock. Encouraging some vital activities such as functioning of Kolkata airport were restored a day after the cyclone struck, facilitating movement of essentials and additional NDRF personnel dispatched to restore normalcy. The challenge is to provide prefabricated facilities for safe shelter in the outlying areas. While the battle against the virus may yet be won sooner or later, India must strengthen its response capabilities for a never-ending cycle of storms along its coastline. A violation of right, but no remedy given. The maxim ubi jus idi remedies, where there is a right, there is a remedy, has accorded the common law of centuries. In India, the Constituent Assembly regarded the principle as so foundational that through Article 32. Article 32 provides the right to constitutional remedies, which means that the person has a right to move to Supreme Court for getting his fundamental rights protected. It granted the Supreme Court the authority to issue a set of prerogative writs to enforce the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Over the last 4 decades, though, the idea of remedies moving in parallel with the rights have come to wither. In this period, the Supreme Court has enunciated a number of rights which it found ought to be manifest on a proper reading of Constitution. These have included the rights to clean air, health, shelter, human dignity and privacy. But this articulation, stentorian as it might have been, hasn't always led to just results. The court's history is littered with the cases where the violation of right is found, but the remedy hasn't been forthcoming. The ruling delivered on May 11th in a Foundation of Media Professionals versus Union Territory of India, Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, that is FMP, is in many ways symptomatic of this trend. It is ought to enjoin us to think more deeply about what court's institutional role really should be. The judgment begins thus. Again, this court is called upon the address of very important but a sensitive issue. We have to ensure that the national security and human rights can be reasonably and defensibly balanced, a responsibility that the court takes with utmost seriousness. But while the court found that the prohibition of 4G internet in Jammu and Kashmir was potentially disproportionate, it could not extend itself to remedying the wrong by using a writ to the state. What it did instead was to relate the decision making to a newly formed committee comprising officials from executive. In doing so, it effectively reserved the age-old principle that no person should act as a judge in his own cause. It is a vagueness of purpose. The answers are hard to find in the judgment. The constitution and the debates that went into making are clear on what judiciary's role ought to be. It is meant to act as the independent check on parliamentary and executive actions, but the court remained mired in a vagueness of purpose. What must it strike down legislation? When must it show deference to parliament? Do social welfare measures demand greater deference than ordinary criminal laws? Should the level of scrutiny and executive actions be higher than the employed in testing statutes? Under what circumstances do executive act call for special respect? These questions should have been settled by now, but the court still wavers in its answers every time the new case comes before it. In January, when Anuradha Bhasin, the court recognized something akin to the fundamental right to access the internet, the judgment was widely acclaimed. But of what use is fashioning a new right to the people of Jammu and Kashmir if a decision on whether that right has been violated to consign a very authority that was made original call? There is no doubt that there might be instances in which appreciating evidences can prove to be confounding exercise, but judicial review is not meant to be easy. What we need today is a revision or reversion to first principles, where the court seeks to treat the art of delivering a judgment as an exercise in persuasion, where there is a clear link drawn between rights and remedies. In far too many cases, the court has intervened the basic logical of judicial review. It has either initiated a violation of rights only to deny the remedy, or it has granted remedies without articulating what is right has been violated. Building the trust. Courts build trust not through ambiguous snippets of wisdom, but through an adherence to basic norms. Principle over policy and consistency over randomness are the lodestar tenets of moral codes. The separation of power cannot, an American writer Gore Vidal wrote, be allowed to work simply as a useful device under which any sin of omission and commission shifted from one other branch of government to another. We needed to do more. We needed to uphold the rule of law for the violation of right to be found, giving no remedy. This is regarding the Jammu and Kashmir prohibition of 4G case, the statement by the court and the remedy, how they violated. This focuses on Article 32, which provides a right to constitutional remedies. This is from the discussion of op-ed. Op-ed means opposition to the editorial, which focuses on two articles. Will the sports be same in the empty stadia? And in months after COVID-19, will sports be same after in empty stadia? will mark a new normal, at least till the ends of the year. Players will have to tune their minds. Last weekend's return of the German's football Premier Division marked a revival of top-flight international sporting action after 2 months long hiatus, but the physical distancing measures necessitated by COVID-19 ensured that the matches were played without fans. India is a long way from starting tournaments, with the government having just given a nod for individual training to resume under speculator-less conditions. It did feel strange. As a player, I would always prefer to play in front of fans, but the spectator, I was happy. It looks like once the lockdown ends slowly and competition starts, we'll have to play in empty stadium. It was written by one of the players. Cinemas after COVID. Online platforms provide an alternative to big screen halls, but their reach is limited. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis had led to large-scale anxieties for the future of arts. Many livelihoods rely upon performing and visual arts. It is just not a fraternity of artists, but their support staff, co-workers, and entire ecosystem that is sustained through their practice. We are the largest filmmaking nation in the world. The film industry offers jobs, several thousands. The lockdown will eventually relax at some point, can be seen in different parts of the world, but many of the opinion that the pandemic will significantly impact our film viewing behavior and other economic decisions around it. We might stay away from the film theaters to avoid large gatherings. This could also indicate a shift towards viewing films on online platforms, which have already made a dent during this lockdown. Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. have witnessed a record surge in subscription during this lockdown. This doesn't mean that everybody has suddenly turned a film lover, but that these platforms offer a plethora of entertainment options for the people locked inside their homes. The content and range of programs on these portals is also far superior to what is available on regular television. Direct-to-home releases. Their numbers might further increase. Bypassing the censors. Also, you could bypass many problems of censor certification if they release film on these platforms. Amidst the ongoing pandemic, many film festivals are moving online. Britain's most famous socialist filmmaker, Ken Loach, has made some of his best films available for free on YouTube. Other film streaming platforms are making foreign and documentary cinema available at a nominal fee for a limited time span. However, there is also a grave danger. Access to these platforms is largely limited to urban demography that can afford an internet connection. Also, along with the subscription fee, which also determines the class, character, and potential viewers. If this were to become a norm, it would exclude a large majority of film viewing population. This will be a denial of cinema to those who have been in utmost supporters. And that's it for the end of today's discussion regarding the articles which were published in Editorial and Open Page discussion, that is OPED, opposition to editorial page discussion. Thanks for watching and goodbye.